Our weekly visit with Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, is presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Better rates, better coverage, and better service. That's why Tennesseans have been relying on Farm Bureau Health Plans for their health coverage for 75 years. As we welcome in Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you. Good morning.
Mike, it's a big game and a big challenge with Jacksonville, just a huge matchup in the AFC South. Before we break that one down, I wanted to ask you about just the crazy week it's been for the Titans with Jon Robinson's exit as general manager. What will you remember the most about the lasting legacy, the impact that Jon had on this organization?
I think it's pretty much what I've said all week. It's that he leaves it a lot better than what he found it. He found a tough situation that was the result of probably 7 years of circumstances. And it was not one person's fault. And there were good people who got caught up in what was left. People who were just in difficult situations. Jon got here with a charge from Amy. Amy Adams Strunk found him, hired him, felt like he was absolutely the right person for the job. And I think she was proven 100% correct because it was not only a personnel change, but it was a total culture change that had to shift in this organization. Amy Adams Strunk was and is committed to that. And that the football part of it obviously had to come first because, let's face it, your best marketing tool in any organization is winning. I mean, anything that you're doing, you've got to win. And for a football team or for any sports team, it's even more important. And he changed that dynamic. We went from losers to winners. And by flipping that script and getting us to the point where we are right now, he leaves it so much better than what he found it. And, leaves with a lot of people who tip their cap to him for the way he did his job and the way he handled people. And I think the community understands too that he's somebody that this meant so much to in such a deep way that it's very similar to Jeff Fisher, very similar in my mind to that time, because there may be people who think one thing or the other thing about whether or not he should be the general manager. I get that, and that's a discussion for another time. But people feel loyalty to the person because they had such respect for how he did his job and how much he cared and how nice he was to people and how professional he was. And that was the same thing when Coach Fisher left. It was people separated the head coach part of it from the person part of it. Everybody pulled for Jeff Fisher. I think everybody pulls for Jon Robinson. I think that's who he is, and that's a long answer to your question, but that's how I feel about it. And Amy Adams Strunk saw it. She saw it. When the first time she met with him, she said she knew that was her guy, and that was a pretty good hire. That was pretty. That was pretty doggone good. I'd say that was awfully well done by ownership.
Mike, you've been here since the beginning of it, calling games, being in the city, watching all things grow from first ownerships to name changes on stadiums to GMs to coaches. And this phase right here, I think you look at it and say, people use that term, okay, you're starting on second base in a sense. But as you said, this team is a lot better than what it was initially. I think in a situation like this, it's to make the next best move forward before all the new stuff come about. The next guy has his hands full. Mike, would you say?
Yes. And that's one of the reasons she makes the change when she does, Ramon, because there are going to be so many decisions to be made in the offseason. And she makes the change when she does in order to get that person on the ground and have them be ready to go, maybe even before this season is over.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about the next 5 regular season games, but I'm saying before the playoffs are over or whatever, this person is going to have to make a lot of big decisions about personnel on the current roster as the puzzle fits with the salary cap. This person is going to have to decide how the puzzle is going to go back together. And from there, that's going to affect your draft strategy. That's going to affect everything that you do. So, yeah, I mean, I've described it this week as we're coming to the end of a wave. And what I mean by that doesn't mean we're going to crash.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that this team has won and won and won. And so the salary cap challenges have grown every single year. And now the decisions are going to have to be made in order to keep us from crashing. You know, there's a mindset in some organizations that you just wipe the slate clean and start over. And then, you know, you'll have to live through 2-14 or 3-13 or whatever. That's not what our ownership is interested in. Our ownership is interested in making the moves that keep us, you know, sort of in that conversation, and we start a new wave in a different way, which is why, you know, I think the timing of it was surprising, yes. Mm-hmm. But I think when you look at how she's done things in the past and where she sees us going, it's not as surprising, because she wants to have this person ready to go to the Senior Bowl, ready to, you know, have a staff put together. She wants continuity going forward to the point that we have the ability to, you know, to go into year, what would be 9 of her tenure, mm-hmm. and hopefully be able to continue to rise.
Mike, you're just embedded in this league as the players are, because you're there every single week, even in the offseason. You know, there's certain things you do with this Titans organization. Are you, I guess, in a sense, prepared for what this next phase is going to be? You know, this has been historically a run-style type of team, and now you got a coach and whatever the GM's going to be able to do. Are you ready to say more, you know, 70-yard touchdown passes or anything else that comes behind it?
Well, I think, you know, philosophically, we've always run.
Yeah.
And there's certain organizations that, you know, they've had a philosophy, and when we've been good, this is what we've done. Mm-hmm. Now, we've had years, 2002, 2003 with Steve McNair, really, you know, threw the ball really, really well in 2019 and 2020. And I think starting to throw the ball better now. I think you've got to be able to do both. And I think philosophically, you've always got to continue to build on that. But I think there's a deep belief in Vrabel that if you don't have a run game, that essentially you're not playing to the style that he wants to play. And, you know, he wants to win the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. And that's a key for him in terms of what he believes the game's all about. On offense, when you say that, that's not pass protecting 60 times a game. That's being able to have the balance and to run the ball. I don't think the Titans, I mean, there's always this perception when you have this conversation that we throw the ball 4 times a game. You know, that we're like one of the service academies who runs the triple option. That's 100% not true, of course, but that's a perception when you say it. I think if you look at most good teams in the league, having a run game is a fundamental part of what they do. Mm-hmm. Is it as big a deal for the Kansas City Chiefs? No, it's not. But they also have a generational talent at quarterback. I mean, not many people have a generational talent at quarterback. A lot of people have nice quarterbacks, good quarterbacks, but, you know, you've got to fit a style for just a team unless you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and not many people do.
Mike, when it comes to, you know, making this decision on the general manager moving forward, how much say do you think a head coach should get, or how much say do you feel like Mike Vrabel will get?
I think he's going to continue to be collaborative in the process. I think he likes the process very much. He understands it well. He and Jon, you know, were together at pro days at different places, spent a lot of time together at Senior Bowl and at Combine. And, you know, the people who would come in for the 30 visits, the majority of the public doesn't know who those pre-draft visitors were, but they were always people that you knew Mike would like. You understood, like Roger McCrary is a player that Jon Robinson fundamentally likes from a scouting standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Vrabel will fundamentally like because of how he plays and what his mindset is. And so there was a lot more of that I saw than guys that they brought in and you went, really? That doesn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Vrabel has always had a lot in it, and I think he will continue to. Now, here's the other thing, too. As a head coach advances, he always gets more say-so. If you're
Right.
keeping your head coach, which we obviously are, and he's having success, which he obviously is, as he gets better at the job of being head coach, he gets more say. That's just natural. Like Vrabel had more say in year 5 than he did in year 1 because he's a different guy right now. So Vrabel at a different point certainly has earned the right to continue to have more say. So, but Vrabel doesn't, that's not really how he rolls. I don't think he wants to be, king of the world. I think he wants to coach a football team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might be aware he does offer opinions occasionally. Like anytime. Mike Vrabel is not bashful, is what I'm saying. So to think that he's just sat around and gone, I don't think, whatever. He doesn't say whatever a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You always know where he stands. And I think that's going to be the case for the next GM as well. And, there's going to be a general manager search. That was the first question I asked internally. Are we going to have another general manager? Are we going to go to some different sort of setup? And absolutely not. There's going to be a general manager. There will be a search.
Okay.
And I mean, I think inside or outside, there will be candidates. And, they'll look for what is the best fit. And obviously, part of that fit will be how they deal with Vrabel. He's done a great job. He's a good coach. We're lucky to have him.
Well, there's a big game coming up here on Sunday. I feel like we
aware.
always say that, right? Yeah, Mike, there's a game coming up. But the Jags rolling into town. The first meeting with the Jags this season, kind of crazy. It's towards the end, both of them. But, Mike, what do they got to do to kind of get back on track here? I know injuries have plagued them a bit lately, but this one, I mean, they get closer to clinching the division with a win.
Yeah, a win here, and you put yourself in what feels like an inevitable position to win the division. It's because it's a win for you and it's a loss for Jacksonville, and it also puts Indianapolis sort of on the clock with where they are. So I mean, it's the biggest game of the season to this point. And you say, really? But you went and played Green Bay in primetime. It's like, no, this is a division game where you've got a chance to go 4-0 in the division. You've got a chance to go 8-5 overall. And you've got a chance to get really, really close to making the tournament. And that's ultimately what this is. And again, this is not going to be a team that's going to take the number 1 seed. So if they could get this division clinched earlier rather than later, there are things that they could do, much like what Cincinnati did last year in Week 18, where you can almost work yourself into resting some guys to get ready for the playoff game. And you get a playoff game at home. So all of those things factor together to add to its importance. It is unusual because the entire situation is we haven't seen these guys in 52 weeks. So, I mean, and I hadn't even seen them much, because
Right.
the path of them crossing with our next opponent really hasn't come up this much. So in studying them this week, the big thing that stands out to me is they're 4-8. But 6 of their 8 losses have been games where they have had a lead in the fourth quarter. They're markedly better overall. They're markedly better statistically. They're a team that if you told me in 5 weeks that they had run the table and finished 9-8, I would absolutely believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are good enough to do that. So the Titans going to have to do a lot of work to be able to beat this team. Again, to me, it just starts with the line of scrimmage. The Titans lost both lines of scrimmage last week, and that can't happen this week. It just can't happen.
Mike, on the way out, how different of a challenge is this version of Trevor Lawrence this season versus the one the Titans saw last year?
He's not taking as many chances, Will. He's not trying to do the things that he got away with at Clemson because he was Trevor Lawrence and he had 16 first-round picks playing with him, there were things that his natural ability allowed him to do. And I think it's not that he is hesitant. It's that he is savvy now. He sees, take the check down, throw the ball in the flat, take the deep shot here because you can't get hurt. All of these things that you just have to learn. And I think it was beneficial for him to play last year, even though he had 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions, because he saw it. And then this year with Doug Peterson, who's a real-life quarterback coach and an excellent offensive mind. Press Taylor's a really good coach. I mean, you look up and down their offensive staff, you could see it. And so when they sat down with him in the room and said, oh, by the way, here's what we want you to do in this situation, he got it. So really, I mean, his talent is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. When we heard he was coming in the division, we're like, really? Seriously?
Right.
Couldn't trade him to Seattle? Seriously? I mean,
we'll take him.
I mean, he has the potential to be a generational talent in and of himself, because he combines the skills of one of those 80s and 90s quarterbacks, being that 6'6" drop back passer, with the skills of today's quarterbacks, which is actually being able to run. And his running, and when he runs, is actually another really big factor in the success of this offense this year. He's a good player. He really, really is.
Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, our guest every Friday morning here on the show. Appreciate the time as always, Mike, and have a good call on Sunday.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Thanks,
All right,
Mike.
there is voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, with us on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline.